Is Apple a welcome partner in getting your app out onto their system and therefore making a lot of money, or are they an unwanted middleman? Hey everyone, this is Kevin the Apptrepreneur, and you all know that I'm not a huge fan of Apple. I mean, they make good products, they make pretty products, but I have always had a problem with Apple's philosophy. They are closed system, proprietary software dominated hardware that you cannot even change your own battery. I think Apple has been, by and large, very, very bad for the industry, the computer industry, or the smartphone industry, because while they did bring a lot of stuff to prominence, they also created systems in place that made it so that I thought, were very anti-competitive. For example, smartphones before Apple came along, you used to be able to change your own battery. You just bought a battery, you opened the back, you popped one battery out, you popped it in, there you have it. And when Apple came along and said, no, we're going to close, you have to pay us $100 to change the battery, something you can normally do yourself, but it'll look pretty. And whatever Apple does ends up being the standard, but Apple's products are designed specifically to be anti-consumer. I've even made several videos about this before, one of the most notable being that, well, they throttle their own phones. We're getting to the point where people are realizing you don't need to buy a new phone every single year. The new phones don't have that much different about it. And heck, in Apple's case, the new phones are actually less desirable simply because they refuse to admit that people want that damn headphone jack back. But they will not admit that because people are sheep. They are stupid. They don't know what they want until you give it to them. So what do they got to do? Well, if you're going to hold on to your old phones, they're going to throttle the phones. Now, this is not talking about that despite me just going on a little bit of a rampage. What I'm talking about now specifically is the App Store. And here's the thing with the App Store. It is by far the most widely used App Store in the world. But as usual, it's proprietary. Apple decides what goes on it. Now, you could argue that, well, Google allows what's on there too, but here's the thing. Google will also use, for example, apps that aren't necessarily on the Google Store. You can put them on there. You risk doing that, but you can do that. And also Amazon's devices, as much as I hate that Kindle. The thing is, you can have the Amazon App Store and you will have the Google Play Store. Heck, on my Android phone, I have the Play Store and the Samsung App Store. There is competition, so it's not a monopoly, but with Apple products, you have to use the Apple App Store or nothing at all. And of course, Apple takes a cut of the app that you put on and you sell, and people are saying that's not fair, and they want the Supreme Court to rule on whether or not it can be heard, a case like that. And as you can see, the courts will be deciding on that very thing soon. According to Bloomberg, simplicity is supposed to be a selling point for Apple Inc.'s iPhone. It may be a problem at the U.S. Supreme Court. The court will hear arguments Monday on accusations that Apple is using its market dominance to jack up prices for iPhone apps. A ruling against Apple letting the lawsuit go forward could add to pressure the company already faces to cut the 30% commission it charges on app sales. The case turns on what happens when iPhone users buy something at the Apple App Store. In allowing the suit, a federal appeals court said the transaction is a simple one in which the consumers buy directly from Apple. Apple says it's more complicated, with the company serving as a middleman connecting app developers with users. The distinction is critical because of a 1977 Supreme Court ruling that says only direct purchasers of a product can collect damages for overpricing under federal antitrust law. That decision was designed in part to ensure companies don't have to pay twice for the same misconduct. Apple is part of an app economy that will grow from $82 billion last year to $157 billion in 2022, according to App Annie projections. Apple and its tech industry allies say a decision allowing the consumer lawsuit could open other companies that run online marketplace and platforms to expensive antitrust claims. A board ruling could affect Alphabet Inc.'s Google, Amazon.com Inc., Facebook Inc., Etsy Inc., and DoorDash Inc., Apple and its supporters say. Well, again, I wanted to point out that on my Android phone, which is obviously Google, you have the Play Store, and yeah, that's the one that I use the most, but you also have the plumbing. You also have the Samsung App Store. So there are actually two app stores, and I could probably put more on there. In fact, wow, the plumbing's bad right now. I remember like when I signed up for Grubhub is not, well, at least at the time, it was not on the Play Store. I was I downloaded it through an email. You are allowed to do that on an Android phone, not an Apple phone. So there are some differences there. Anyway, oh, and look at DoorDash to Etsy. This is where it's going to be gig economy related. Quote, any matchmaking service that operates on the internet from DoorDash to Etsy is going to be the subject to duplicate damages, said Marielena Lopez Galdos. I completely messed it up. I'm sorry. Director of Competition and Regulatory Policy at the Computer and Communications Industry Association, which backs Apple in the case. But Apple's critics say its control over the App Store makes it unlike other internet marketplaces. Apple decides what apps can be sold, gives developers a limited number of prices they can charge, and tells users the App Store is the only place they can get apps. Lawyers pressing the suit says, yeah, and they actually started that pricing cap thing, I believe, when someone designed an app. I think it was something like called the Fancy Status Jewel app or something like that. And it cost $1,000. And what was it? Well, it was a gem that when you touched it, it went all shiny. It was a status symbol. And they charged $1,000 for it. Now, the thing is, I think it'd be crazy to buy that thing. But I got enough people talking about it that Apple decided to start capping the prices. And that's one of the problems, because when you have a marketplace, you have to have it open to a certain extent. At least, you know, the way I understand it. Some people might see it differently. Maybe there's some lawyers who can clue me in. I would love to know. Comment below. So anything. When a user buys an app, Apple collects the money, keeps a 30% commission, and gives the rest to the developer. The company told the High Court it passed $26.5 billion onto developers last year. The App Store is, quote, really unique, said Mark Rifkin, one of the lawyers pressing the suit. Apple has put itself in the distribution chain, and it makes us deal with Apple in a way no one else does. Apple says the focus of the lawsuit is the 30% commission, something it says is paid by the developers, not the app purchasers. Although the consumers say they pay for the commissions through higher app prices, Apple says those are the type of pass-through damages barred under the Supreme Court's 1977 Illinois Brick versus Illinois ruling, which is, in a sense, true. Apple does not charge the consumers, but by charging an extra fee, that does usually force the developers to raise the price for the app. I mean, here's the thing. I got Mario Run, the app game, the Mario game, for like $10 on Google. And yet my brother said he paid $12.99 on Apple. And I'm sure the 30% commission had something to do with that. Hundreds of millions. The party first and directly injured by an alleged overcharge has the entire damages claim, Apple argued in court papers. The company's lead Supreme Court lawyer, Dan Wall, declined to discuss the case in advance of the argument. The suit filed in federal court in Oakland, California, seeks class action status and potentially hundreds of millions of dollars. Well, if it's class action, you're not going to get much if you're a consumer. Apple supporters include ACT, the App Association, a developer trade group whose sponsors include Apple, Microsoft, and eBay. The group says the appeals court ruling threatens to disrupt what has been an innovation-friendly system for developers and platforms. App Association President Morgan Reed said the appeals court misunderstood the relationship between developers and platforms, improperly looking at platforms and distributors that buy from vendors and resell to consumers rather than as conduits that simply connect the two. The distinction sounds small, but is at the core of a multi-trillion-dollar global industry, said Reed. Intangible rights. 31 states support the consumers, urging the Supreme Court to allow the lawsuit and also to eliminate the direct purchaser requirement altogether by overturning the Illinois BRIC decision. Illinois BRIC's rule is increasingly difficult to apply in the modern world, with its growing commerce in intangible rights through new platforms, the states argued. The case is a prime example. Most states already allow downstream purchasers to collect damages, and the group says courts have been able to ensure that companies don't have to double pay. The states are led by Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, a Republican, and Iowa Attorney General Tom Miller, a Democrat. So, hey, bipartisanship. The Democrats and Republicans seem to agree on this. I'm sure we could find a lot more to agree on, too, if we stopped griping at each other. I'm sorry, I can't get on that, but, you know, I think we should talk to each other a little bit more, but whatever. Antitrust cases sometimes, but not always, divide the Supreme Court along ideological lines. In its most recent term, the court voted 5-4 to throw out a lawsuit that accused American Express Company of thwarting competition by prohibiting merchants from steering customers to cards with lower fees. That's right. The court will rule by June in the latest case, Apple versus Pepper. So anyway, that's the story. It's a very interesting and very loaded article. So what's my thoughts on this? Well, it is complicated because here's the thing. On one hand, it is Apple's store. It is their store, and they are allowed to charge a commission. They are allowed to set the rules. They are allowed all that stuff. But here's where it might get tricky, because phones have been regulated as public utilities. I assume cell phones also act as public utilities. And when you have a public utility, you cannot be that stringent about it. So for example, if you bought a phone from AT&T, just a regular dial phone, because they used to sell these things, the condition wasn't that you had to have AT&T to run that phone. For that matter, with this phone, if I decide to switch from AT&T to someone else, I should still be allowed to use the phone. It's a public utility. But here's where it gets tricky for Apple. Apple has this app store, and they control it very, very, very much. They are very protective of what they put on the phone. So by basically making sure they're the only ones who can tell you what's on your phone and what you can put on it and what you can take off. Heck, they won't even let you take off certain things. That compromises, from what I understand, the public utility aspect of it. Again, if they want to have the Google Play Store on the phone as well, I think this will avoid a lot of problem, but Apple doesn't want to do that. They never want to do that. And this is one of the reasons I don't even like Apple products in general, because when I buy an Apple computer, they want me to buy their mouse. They want them to buy their keyboard. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not even aware of any Apple accessories that aren't made by Apple. But with my PC, I can upgrade it, I can tweak it, I can change it. With my regular cell phone, I can put an SD card in it. Apple will not let me do that. If you want more space, you know what Apple says? Sign up for iCloud. Well, I just want to get an SD card. I don't want to pay monthly for more storage. Like, no, get an iCloud account. Trust us, it's better. Apple is a shady company. I have never ever liked Apple, and I don't even think the only product of theirs that I have is an iPod. And here's another thing. I just got a new computer, and some of the songs that I bought before they went all DRM free says, "Oh, you have maxed out your computer authorizations." So I'm glad I didn't get rid of my laptop, because I got to go to that laptop and deauthorize that computer. For what? Why do I even need to do that? Just let me have my damn music. But, anyway, that's my little rant. What do you guys think? Do you think this is going to work out in Apple's favor, or do you think they're going to lose a lawsuit? I would love to know. So comment below, like, favorite, share, subscribe. If you enjoy my videos, consider becoming a Patreon member. It's totally optional, of course, but even as little as $1 a month goes a long way to helping this channel run smoothly. And as always, flame responsibly. Have a good one.